global rules and you can't transgress them. You can't reform your tax code. It'll make the U.S. too competitive. Now, first, let's look at the hypocrisy here. The European Union here is saying the U.S. can't enact every aspect of this tax reform for reasons. It prevents multinationals from offshoring enormous sums of money at a whim. It prevents U.S. firms from paying a tax haven tax rate while licensing everything over here and then forcing franchisees in the United States to basically suck them off. So it helps U.S. businesses, it helps the U.S. people, as we've seen with AT&T among other companies. They're feeling the love right now. But trust me, this is going to be like the most popular tax reform passage since the Reagan administration. Trump is going to rise significantly in approval. It's the wallet. It's the money, stupid. It has all this other stuff has become secondary because of this. There's a reason that they're about to have a big-ass celebration at the White House over this. Just going to be the way that it is. Trump, the hashtag resist people are going to have a pretty fucking sad Christmas, I think. When they see the next round of polling, I think that they'll be surprised. But the European Union heads, they never aim this sort of criticism at protectionist nations in the third world. It's just like with human rights abuses. People always call out like the U.S. government, and I do too. When the U.S. government mollycoddles Saudi Arabia, which is one of the world's greatest human rights abusers, while talking about how evil the Iranians are, and that's hypocritical, in all honesty, they call that out, but they're not willing to call out the European Union states for thinking they're so holier than thou, and their third world tin horn allies and trading partners. No, we'll leave them alone, but we need to talk down to that evil orange bully Trump. And people here who think that they're anti-establishment, again, like hashtag resist people, they don't even realize the real world establishment has become a globalized establishment. It's not even just the U.S. government. It's just like when we criticize Congress or the president or something. That's all well and good, and that's definitely fair. But most of the abuse at this point comes from bureaus. It comes from the heads of bureaus and from their heavily armed, militarized agents and their surveillance state. They're the ones that handle that apparatus. Congress barely knows, I think, at this point what even goes on. Everything's so compartmentalized and so complicated and so legalistic and classified and requires, 10 signatures to see a single, line that's been unredacted. At this point, even Congress, I think, totally lost control of things. So when this tax reform went through, at first I was like, well, I'm optimistic. It looks good, certainly. Even Trump's opponents, their summation of what it will do, they're like, well, it gives bigger savings to the rich. But if you look at the proportion, it's actually heavily slanted towards the lower rungs. Those are the ones getting the most tax relief. Somebody who's making $1 million a year, they save $10,000. Yeah, it's a lot of money, but at the same time, relative to the amount that they actually pay, it's fairly small. Meanwhile, somebody who makes $25K a year, they're saving $1,000. They're basically not paying anything. It's great for the lower and working and lower middle class. They're getting the bulk of the relief. The middle and upper middle class are getting a fairly good chunk, like I'm getting some. Not as much as if I made half of what I'm making, but it's substantial. People who are rich, they're barely getting anything, just as an absolute number. People don't understand ratios to absolute numbers. It's actually rather sad that mathematics has declined so significantly in this country. People just gobble up the propaganda swill. But who died made the European Union king over our fiscal policy? If you don't like the fact, if you think that we're going to become too competitive for you, if you want to whine, say, well, you big bad U.S. will steal our jobs, basically, why don't you become more competitive